Mhm.
Fantastic. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another ASEA Global Expansion Team Zoom. We have the amazing Beth Wofford from Lexington, Kentucky, joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about ASEA and animals. So, Beth, thanks so much for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here, Cindy. It's always wonderful to work with you.
Yeah, I love seeing you. And we caught up a little bit this afternoon, so I can't wait to talk about some of the things we talked about this afternoon. But before we get going on that, let everybody know, how did you find out about ASEA? Who reached out to you, and how did you learn about it?
Well, I had a wonderful, wonderful dear friend who was a family practice physician. I think we all know him as the Redox Doc. His name was Rob Ward, and he was a really dear friend of mine for 30 years. And we played the game. He was a very holistically minded conventional doc, but I always said he chafed under the yoke of conventional medicine. So he was very holistic, and we would trade back and forth. I'd call him and say, "What do you know about colloidal silver?" And he'd call, "Oh, what do you know about this?" And so we kept kind of talking about different things. And he called me one day and he said, "I think I've found this is the biggest thing I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it's going to change the medical community as we know it, and medical science as we know it." And I said, "I have never heard you talk that way." He does not talk in hyperbole usually. And I said, "What is this stuff?" And he gave me a rough outline of the science. I love science. I think science is just awesome. And my family's are all scientists. So when he kind of explained roughly what this was, and that it was 100% non-toxic and it couldn't hurt you, and all it does is just help your body heal itself, I just said, "I want what? How can I get this stuff? I want it right now." And I just jumped in with both feet, just because I loved him and I trusted him, and I believed what he said. And I thought, oh my gosh, my husband and I have trained racehorses our whole lives. I started getting paid to ride horses when I was 14. So we want to continue to do this. I just turned 70 and he's 74, and we want to keep training horses till we're 90. So I just thought it was a wonderful idea. We could stay younger longer. We could continue to do what we love doing for a longer period of time. And we had some incredible product experiences that I had no idea were going to happen, but I started sharing it with everybody that I could think of, and poured it down all my animals. And because I knew that every cell works the same way, the basic mechanism of every cell works the same way, and I knew it wouldn't hurt any animals. So I started, kind of finding out what this did, and it was just remarkable. The rest is history. It was the best decision I'd made in my lifetime, I think, or one of the best.
Right. So, did you have a product experience before you started sharing it, or did you just start sharing it and have a product experience along the way?
Great question. I did not. I wasn't expecting any product experience. I said, "I'm 100% healthy. I feel great. I ride horses every day. It's no big. I don't need this I need it for prevention. I want to stay younger longer." I thought I would bought into that idea. So I started sharing it and started getting an incredible thank you check for sharing it with people, because I kept getting these people coming back to me saying, "You can't believe what it did for this." And my husband was having trouble breathing, and oh my gosh, this happened, and oh my gosh, this happened. And I started seeing it all over the place. And then I started realizing, I had some lifelong kind of chronic issues that I just never thought. It never occurred to me in a million years that this could help it, because no medication had ever helped it. The main thing was one-sided, horrible one-sided excruciating discomfort in my head, that we've all kind of heard of. And I've had those since I was 11 years old. And I just learned that, when I started where I couldn't see very well, and I knew that this was coming, that it was coming on, the discomfort was going to be there. I just had to be in a dark room. So it never occurred to me that because that had been a part of my life, my whole life. And after about 6 months, I started thinking, when did that last happen? And I realized I hadn't had one of those episodes since I started drinking ASEA, and that was 14 years ago. So
Yeah.
it
Isn't that
was life
crazy?
changing. Yeah.
Well, used to get sores in his mouth, and it was just became a way of life, and it was a very uncomfortable way of life. and you can't figure out what's
Yeah.
throwing your balance off and why you're getting them. And
Right.
then we started drinking ASEA, and one day it dawned on us, just like it did on you. Hey, when was the last time you had one of those sores in your mouth? He said, man, I haven't had those in what, 8 months now? So things just sometimes, if you're not careful, because we don't pay attention to things that aren't bothering us, right? We tend to pay attention to things that are bothering us. So yeah, it's good to just kind of reflect on and not take those things for granted. But when did you
And
start?
now,
Go ahead.
sorry, now in every case we have those inventories, body inventories. So now we are careful to tell people to fill those out, because sometimes you do forget. You forget you ever had a problem when it's over. So excuse me, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask you. So when you started using it on animals, what made you decide which animals to use it on? Did they have to have something wrong with them, or were you using it on prevention for them, or how did you go about using it on animals, and what kind of animals?
Right. That's a really good question too, because we work with young racehorses here on our farm. So they're like 18 months to 2 years old. So they're very young. And as we learn more about the molecules, you realize that um, any animal or species that is under the age of puberty basically really has a full complement of redox molecules. So as I was learning more about this, I thought, well, the horses that we train, people send us horses to train, and then they go from our farm to the racetrack. And I was thinking, they're awfully young. They probably don't need it on a regular basis because they have a full complement. But I always laugh and say young racehorses are kind of like Labrador puppies. They kind of crash around in each other, and they don't know where their bodies are, and they beat each other up, and they run through the fence, and they bang each. So there's always something going on, cuts and scrapes and swellings and all that kind of thing. And I started thinking, hey, when they'd come in, and I think the first really impressive thing was a horse came in. And when horses have a tendency, just like kids, when they start school, if they're under stress, they pick up all sorts of things that their immune systems have never been exposed to before. And when I get young horses to ship into the farm, they've never left their farm of origin, of birth. So they have to get in a van, which is really freaking them out. And then they come here, and half the time they have to leave some of their friends at home, and they don't know where they are. And it's a very stressful thing for them for a couple days until they understand that we're going to have fun. So, but they have a tendency, it manifests, they get little coughs and snotty noses, but also they get real goopy eyes. And this one filly came in after she'd been with us for maybe 5 days, and she came in with her eye almost swollen, about half shut, and it was all just draining and just looked horrible. And I thought, oh, poor girl. And if it's really bad like that, it was pretty extreme. Usually we use ophthalmic ointment, it comes in a little metal tube. And I hate giving it because I always think I'm going to poke them in the eye, and I just hate it. And they hate it. They fight you. And I thought, what the heck? There are these little spray bottles that we get from ASEA. I'm going to try this stuff and see what happens. I'm going to try the redox and see, because I had heard that people were putting it in their eyes, and it was soothing to their eyes. And I thought, what the heck? Let's see what happens. And I thought the spray was probably going to bother her. And I would just kind of had the spray going, and she was blinking a little bit. But as soon as it hit her eye, she just leaned into me. She was like, oh, that feels so good. Oh my gosh. And I just drenched her. I just, the whole side of her face, I just drenched it. And the next morning she came in, and her eye was 100% completely clear. And I thought, that's awesome. So, and you can't placebo an animal. So, I couldn't tell her, oh, this is a special magical, molecular supplement that's going to make your eye better. She just said, hey, that feels great. And her body recognized it. And her immune system was signaled to do the right thing. And she came in the next day completely clear. So, and many other, I mean, every time I had then it started becoming kind of our the first thing we chose from our arsenal of, from our toolbox. And every time a horse came in with any kind of scratch or swelling or anything, we just coat it. And that back then, of course, we just had the spray. I use a spray bottle a lot in the barn, and I still do, because even though we keep Renew 28, the gel, in the barn quite a bit, if especially if it's a laceration, like a cut or something, I feel like number one, when you rub a laceration, it's going to introduce maybe more germs. But even though I know our Renew, cuts those germs out, but when you spray it on, number one, it feels really good to them. They love it. And so, I can spray it and just drench the whole area with the liquid, and I don't have to touch it. I don't have to aggravate it, and I don't have to upset them by saying, no, no, don't touch me. It hurts. And the healing is just remarkable. So I've
Yeah.
been documenting that a long time.
I know you have a Facebook site, ASEA Healthy Pets, that you have a lot of pet stories in there so people can see before and afters and different people's experiences and what they're doing with it. And yeah, so I know you had, yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry. We changed the name to
Oh,
Healthy
that's right.
Redox Pet.
That's right.
So the Facebook page is Healthy Redox Pets.
Healthy Redox Pets on Facebook. Yeah, sorry about that. Right, that's right. We've all gone through adjustments. And then you were
Right.
telling me earlier that you had something dramatic happen completely out of the blue. You were throwing a curveball in the beginning of the year. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And the nice thing is I have a really neat, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And the neat
Yeah.
thing about animals is that you take a lot of pictures at the beginning, and they kind of tell you through their healing process just by watching them, how much it heals. So I have a little PowerPoint I can share as well, and I can tell the story along the way. Can I go ahead and share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead and do that. Your background is kind of funky. I don't know if it's because you have a fake background behind you. I hope the screen is, I think that's much more clear. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just because I don't have a green screen behind me. That's probably what it is. Can you see
Right.
that okay?
I can see that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Um, okay, well, this is the story of Smokey. I have shared with you that my husband and I have been training racehorses for about 50 years on our farm here in Kentucky. And about 15 years ago, we got a chance to build our dream barn. This barn, we designed every nail in the barn, and it is our beloved barn. I think Bill spent more time there than he did in the house half the time. He loved our barn. But on January 21st of this year, this happened.
Mm.
And it just was a gut punch for both of us. It just about killed us. There were no horses in the barn. It was at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Sunday. The horses were all turned out. You can see it was very, very cold. We had snow in the ground. And we stood there and watched our beautiful barn burn, but we were so happy there were no horses that were compromised. But the next morning, as we were standing here looking at this, I started getting very emotional because I realized there's no way possible our barn kitty could have escaped. And right about that time, just like a Disney movie, it was unbelievable. We heard meowing coming from the nearby woods, and he came running out of the woods. But he was extremely traumatized. He was very badly burned. His poor little feet, I don't know how he even ran out of the woods, except it was 14 degrees and snow. So it probably froze his feet. He couldn't feel the blisters. You can see it burned all of his whiskers off. He had two really severe burns over his eyes, and we really thought we'd lose his ears because his ears were so badly burned.
Mm.
You can see the one over his right eye was so bad that I thought it was going to really interfere with his sight on the right side. So I was worried about using Renew because I was afraid that you think maybe it's going to hurt too badly. So this is 3 days and then 5 days. This 3 days over here and 5 days over here. And I would just put a big glob of Renew in my hand, and I would just hold it over each one of those places, the burns on his face, and I would just rub it real gently around in a circle. And he loved it. He just purred and purred. When he was so traumatized that I took him into the house, and this is a barn cat. He'd never been in a house before. He's only 10 months old, so he was young. But I took him in and I put him upstairs in our bathroom, which is quite a bit of room there. But he wouldn't come out of his carrier. I stuck him in the carrier to get him in the house, and he really wouldn't come out. I had to coax him. And after about 3 days, he was coming out, sitting in my lap. And every time I'd get the gel out, he would just start purring and purring. And I would tent my fingers, kind of put Renew all over the inside of my fingers, and I would just tent my fingers over top of his ears and just really gently massage his ears. And he, again, just like the horse I described, he would lean into my hand, just like, oh yes, yes, yes. It felt so good. Which, I mean, think about it. If this was really salt water or just salt, there's no way that would have been comfortable on serious burns. So, and then after I put it on his feet, and then afterwards you can see that the white hair is kind of singed yellow, and he smelled so bad. He smelled like burned hair. And so after I would finish treating his burns, I would rub my hands together and just rub it all over his coat. And it only took about 2 days and the smell went away. And of course, he loved it. He thought that that felt really good when I was rubbing him. And 10 days later, wait a minute, here we go. He's a happy kitty. He started, as soon as he heard the door open, he'd jump out of his carrier and he'd run over to me. We all decided he did not need to be a barn cat anymore. So my daughter adopted him. We renamed him Smokey, and he is now living a life of leisure. And that's him all upside down in my daughter's house. And he's doing beautifully. You can see that where that last little piece over his right eye, but that's really pink, healthy skin. So the ones before the here, he had a huge scabs over top of that area. And now he has nice pink skin. And his little ears, we thought we were going to lose his ears. And the more I kept rubbing them, the more I thought, well, I think they're going to harden. They're going to kind of calcify and harden so that they wouldn't be able to move around. And they're just as healthy as they can be. The very tips of them sloughed off a little bit. But Jesse said now he looks kind of like a little bear. He has little rounded ears, but he is happy as he can be. And he's kind of a testament to Bill and I. He kind of seems like he symbolizes a rebirth. So we're now rebuilding our barn. So
there you go. Well, so that was your main source of income, right? So, I mean, all of a sudden overnight you were out of business, huh?
Absolutely. We stood there watching this fire thinking, okay, we are effectively, literally out of business. We have not been unemployed in our entire lives. We didn't know what to do. We had to ship the horses out the next day. Our owners were so fabulous, and the horse community was so supportive and so kind. But there's no way we could keep the horses without the barn. And so we didn't know what we were going to do. But the interesting thing is, you've heard my story about how wonderful I thought the product was with ASEA. And I started getting a thank you check just by sharing it with people and saying how amazing this was. And I was so excited. And then I met the corporate leaders. And back then, 14 years ago, there weren't many of us. And you go out and you meet those people. And I was sitting there with them and I thought, I've been with horses my whole life, but I want to be like these people. I want to be around people with this kind of integrity and kindness and compassion. And if you've seen the Genesis video, you know what I'm talking about, that they're just special, special people. And I thought, they want to make the world a better place. I want to be on board with them. I want to help make that happen. So I started sharing from my heart. Everybody in the world deserves to know about this, everyone. And I wasn't going to be the one that would have somebody suffer because they didn't know. So I just told everybody, and we started getting very, very well paid from the company. But that was never my initial response, but it was wonderful to have the money. And what it did, Bill started realizing, and we started talking about this, we're going to train racehorses as long as we possibly can. But this was like an insurance policy. If something happened to one of us, the other one didn't want to stay in business. If something happened to one of us, and, face it, racehorses, you get hurt a lot. So who knows? And we knew that that was like insurance money, that no matter what happened to us, ASEA could get us through. Well, it actually happened. So ASEA is now paying the mortgage on our farm. and paying quite a few of our bills. We're now set up kind of with temporary stalls, and we have some horses back in to train. So we have a little money coming back in, waiting for our barn to be rebuilt. But honestly, ASEA is supporting us now, which I cannot even begin to tell you what it's meant to us. I don't know what we would do if I didn't have that, if I hadn't built that ASEA business. So it really is remarkable. Don't ever, ever take that business for granted. Don't ever take it for granted. So it was just a real special thing.
Yeah. So we encourage people to build your plan B before you need it, dig your well before you're thirsty. And, even if it's just for an insurance policy, I mean, they call them curveballs because you don't see them coming, right? Never in a million years would
Exactly.
you think that this was going to be what was going to happen in your life, right?
True. True. It's just incredible. It has been my experience with ASEA has been one of the most rewarding aspects of my life. And in the last 14 years, I have met some of the most wonderful people through the whole, not only the corporate leaders, which they set the tone, of course. And we found that the people that are drawn to ASEA and really want to get in and really stay with ASEA are the people whose hearts match that. We have the same um, it, frequency or something, that we really are attracted to one another because everybody wants to help the world be better. So, how can you lose when you're with a bunch of people like that and you're
That's
you're
right.
able to spend time? So
So
it's been
talk a little
great.
bit
And
about
you,
your business. Has it spread beyond Lexington, or are you pretty local in the horse community in Lexington, or how does your business grown?
I will say this, I do not prospect through animals. I love the idea that I'm kind of known because I was the first professional animal person that signed up in ASEA. And so I kind of got earmarked as the animal person, which I love. I'm very honored that I'm known as the animal person in ASEA. And because of that, I have a lot of people sending me all their stories. And I did a monthly call for a while that became a monthly webinar. Now, those webinars are all archived. So we don't do them regularly anymore, but they're archived at animalwebinar.com. Password is associate with a capital A. And there are probably 40 or 45 videos there telling all sorts of stories. They're all about a half an hour long, talking about people's experiences with ASEA and animals, with redox and animals. However, that's not how I do business. I kind of have, I think part of it is that I have trouble changing hats. I'm either a horse person or I'm a ASEA person. And so I have a little trouble changing hats. And I've just found that when I present myself as a redox specialist, I don't present myself as a horse trainer. So it's a whole different group of people. My team, they're just lovely, wonderful, warm people, and none of them have really anything to do with animals, which is, I mean, they have pets, but I did not meet them through animals in any way, which is curious because people always say, well, how am I going to talk to people about animals? And I said, well, talk to them about their own bodies. When I do a lot of three-way calls with people, and they say, how am I going to tell this person that she needs to give all her horses ASEA? And I said, the first thing you do is talk to her. I've never met a horse person in my life that doesn't hurt somewhere. Because if you've been around horses long enough, you always get hurt. We've been hurt a lot in our lives, and we've, thank heavens, healed back really well. So I said, just ask them where they hurt and then talk to them about their own bodies and then say, and guess what? This product works the same on every living cell, no matter the species. So if you've got issues with, oh, do you think it would? I've got this 30-year-old horse over here that's really, got joint problems. Do you think it could help him? Well, let's see. Why don't we? And then they start seeing the possibilities, and then it extrapolates into them working with their animals. So, and we've just about every species you can think of. We've had snakes and ferrets and guinea pigs, and of course, many, 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 many stories of dogs and cats and horses, but just all sorts of birds. Birds love this. Even plants love ASEA. So, it's wonderful because oftentimes, especially people that are very, very scientific, and they think that this is something that, oh, I don't know how, if this is, this might be placebo, and we might overthink this. And then they say, gosh, you know, there might be something that's really real about this if it helps animals, because you can't fake an animal out.
That's
So
right.
sometimes it helps people like that as well.
Now let's talk about the business model. So, how many, do you know how many countries that your business is in currently? Do you have any idea?
Probably quite a few countries in Europe. I have one in New Zealand and one in Australia. So probably nine, maybe eight or
Okay.
nine
And how
countries
did
at
that
this point.
happen? Had you done network marketing before? Did you understand how this business ripples away from your hometown and goes around can take your business around the world, that word of mouth around the world?
I was in another network marketing company, but again, I was not business oriented at all. I loved it was another wellness company that, had products that could help your body heal itself. Nothing like Redox, but it was the concept was there. And I never had a lot of um, success with that company, and it wasn't something that was uppermost in my mind. As ASEA again, it's the idea of becoming a world entity and having a business in all these different countries. Really, I love to travel. So I thought it was a wonderful idea when I heard about all these things, and now I have traveled internationally with my ASEA team. So I love the idea of it. I thought it was really cool, but it really wasn't anyone I sponsored. It were people that my people, I would talk to someone who I didn't know that they had international contacts. And then they would talk to people and they would talk to people and they would talk to people. And that's how it grew. And then we'd have a Zoom and I'd meet these people in Sweden and in Norway and in Australia and in New Zealand. And it was the most organic thing. It was just fabulous. But it didn't come from me. It came from someone who I spoke with, who spoke with, who spoke with. And that's the beauty of this. You never know. You never know who you're gonna come up and bless their lives. You don't know who you're gonna touch.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. So, what's one of the most profound human stories that you've experienced while you've been, working with this technology? Does any human story hit you?
Oh, yeah. Yes, and this was a personal story that I had one of the actually my very, very first associate that ever signed up. She started drinking it and was really building a business and was doing really well. She had a real curmudgeon for a husband who just said, I'm drinking it because my wife tells me I'm supposed to drink it and I don't feel a thing. It doesn't help me at all. And I said, well, you don't know what it's doing. You just don't know. Of course, he was a, 2 pack a day smoker and he lived on chicken McNuggets. So, and this stuff doesn't help me. So I just thought, he's just kind of a curmudgeon. She was having a great time building a business, and he was taking it because she made him. So one day he got a real pesky cough, and he thought he said, golly, I better go have this checked. And actually, they were in the process of moving to California from Lexington, and they moved all their furniture, and they were getting ready to get in a car. But she said, before we leave, let's go to see your primary care doctor because we don't have a doctor out there. So let's just make sure this cough, instead, in case you need to be on antibiotics. Well, he went in there and the doctor put a stethoscope on him, immediately took a lung x-ray and said, you need surgery immediately. There's abnormal cells growing in your lung, and it's the bad kind. And it usually, when we see this, by the time it's big enough to see on an X-ray, it's already metastasized. So we need to get a part of your lung out immediately. But I'm telling you, this is not good news. And they slapped him in the hospital immediately because they had no place to live. He came out of the hospital 5 days later, having his upper right lobe of his lung taken out, and they moved in with us for a month while he was getting better and they could move out. And so, again, my wonderful friend who's a doctor came regularly to visit to see how he was doing. And he took the pathology report when they got the pathology report back that they sent in on the abnormal cells. And he was sitting at my kitchen table and his face just like dropped. And he said, oh my gosh. He said, do you know what this says? This says that this little dot in your lung, which is always, by the time you see it, it has always metabolized, is totally encapsulated. So they said, we don't see that there's any way that this could have gotten outside that upper right lobe of his lung. So I don't think he's going to need to do anything. That was 13 years ago, and he has never had one other conventional protocol to fight that, and he is totally disease free at this time. So that continues to be my best story because he was living in my house and saw it happen. So it was
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. That whole encapsulation word. I mean, we've seen that over the years, over and over and over and over again in different parts of the body. The body, identifies a problem and it surrounds it like an army, and so that it can't cause other problems in other parts of the body. And I mean, what a blessing that is. So, yeah, fantastic.
Well, and the thing I love about that story too is he was sure it wasn't helping him because he had an itchy spot on his skin and he had this and he said it's not helping this, it's not helping this. Well, that's because all those molecules, because the body has that innate sense and more intellect than we do sometimes in our brains, and it was all going to the area that was the most serious,
Into
and
the
it
lung
saved his
cells.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Beth, listen, I could talk to you all day long. I so appreciate you taking time and sharing your knowledge with us tonight. And I'm glad that you're in the rebirthing of your barn and that all your horses are safe and that your little kitty is living the life of Riley.
He is indeed. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Me
So
too.
thanks so much for joining us tonight. Really, really appreciate it.
You bet, Cindy. It's always a pleasure. Anytime. You take care.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.